So, welcome back, everybody. I just got to see, I think it's now 2 days ago, the film Corey Feldman versus the World. Holy SHIT exclamation mark. I have to be careful. The first 7 minutes of YouTube have to be clean. My God. It was how do I say it? I'm not going to say anything. I have today the director, the producer, and the shooter, the cinematographer of the film. Marcie Hume is here today. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to talk to you.
I'm really excited to talk to you. Thank you so much. And thanks for saying all those great things.
Yeah, I want to, there's so much I want to jump into, but just for my audience, can you give my audience a sense of like who you are, where you came from, that you ended up making this film and make films at all? Just curious.
Sure. Who I am is, I'm somebody that pursued documentary making in the way that we all just hopefully pursue things that we love and are passionate about. And recently when you're in a moment of talking about the things that you're doing and talking about a film, you're forced to introspect more than usual. So right now, I would say my obsessiveness about people and understanding what's going on with people in the human condition and our behavior together is really what drives me to make documentaries. That's my high level assessment. But I think documentary making is an instinct, and you just know if that's something that you want to do. I remember the first time I saw a verite documentary, and it was as though the sky opened up and it just was a new world presented itself to me. So I just doggedly pursued work experience at the BBC, which is where I was living in London at the time, and began forcing my way up the ladder over there in that neck of the woods of our world, and began learning the ropes in every way, learning how to film and working in the UK is a great way of learning because they have a great filmmaking sense that's merged with television. So there's not as much differentiation over there as there is here. And then moved back to the US, I think about 13 years ago now, and began working in U.S. television, which is a whole other realm, but just continued making films throughout that time. So I suppose that's a synopsis, but I think I'm driven to understand what's going on with life and the human experience, like all of us are to some extent. And one of the ways I do that is through filmmaking.
I love that. So my understanding is you started shooting this film, I think it's 9 years ago?
Yes, it's over 9 years ago now. I guess it's almost 10 years ago now.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is dedication. Or insanity. It's either insanity or it's dedication, or both.
And certainly persistence. I think you just have to know which things you're going to finish. And at this point in my life, I believe that we have to just decide which things we are going to finish and have no question that we are going to finish them. And that's it. But for the fact that we've decided we're going to do them or finish them, they will not happen. And that's that.
I 100% agree. Why this one, though? What happened that made you go like, oh, this I'm interested in?
The feeling that I had in my stomach when I first saw what Corey was doing and saw the world of his self-produced music videos and that trajectory from being a famous child star and a teen idol in this incredible time of the 80s and 90s, and then to his relationship with fame and what he has tried to do to keep himself going, keep himself alive in that world, in our world of fame and survival, just caught me in a very visceral way that I was just completely in from the beginning. So when I finally got access to film the documentary, which was, it's more than 10 years at this point, because that actually took overall a couple of years really to get that access. So at that point, I was just so mesmerized by what I was seeing when I would film with him, and in that world, everything was that exciting to me, or that compelling, entertaining, a mix of traits. Truly, at all times, it was a mix of descriptors. So I couldn't look away when I was filming, and even now when we go back to the footage and look at things, it's the exact same to me. So for whatever reason, it was that compelling to me and continues to be that compelling to me.
I do know what you mean, because the act of watching it is, yes, okay, to some degree. You can say, oh, it's a bit like watching a train wreck to some degree, which, you know, I've had people say that of The Vow as well. But there's something so absolutely fascinating. And one of the things is this victim-perpetrator sort of duality. I saw an interview you did with somebody on television recently, and they just came straight out and said to you, is Corey Feldman insane? And you were so wonderfully careful in the way that you answered it, because there's so much complexity and so much nuance. What I wanted to know is, because when I watch it, I see he's been hurt. These terrible things, I think, happened to him. He's very damaged, and he's very abusive, and he's very coercive, and he seems to be running what looks like a little mini cult in the film. And I was wondering, is, as you're shooting, as you're on the bus, as you're hanging out with them for all those, you know, months and years, did you have the meta awareness of what you thought was going on psychologically while you were documenting him, or did you just have to put that aside?
It's very difficult looking back, because I think all of us put different lenses on when we look back, and we can't help but put our current knowledge onto the past. Is very hard to take those lenses off. I know that there was a lot of information that I didn't know at the time, because right now I am still learning so much about the experiences of people that were in the film, people in that world, people that orbit that world still. And that lens is still opening up for me. At the time, I was always in a state of learning and figuring out what was going on, and you're exploring it through the lens of curiosity and trying to determine what is happening. And
Yeah.
you're also, as you will know, you're always trying to, well, I'll speak in the first person. I was always trying to maintain a level of access and be kind to everyone and not cross a line of being too invasive. I never wanted to ask too many questions or invade anyone's personal space. You know, these women were under NDAs, but were also given the okay by Corey to be filmed and to be interviewed during this process. So I was always just being very cautious about being appropriate in every way. So there was just a lot going on in those dynamics. So that was a lot of my concern, and I think I was always assessing what was going on, but I really think as a filmmaker, you're looking at things through the access that you have and the lens that you are given, and you are not given the full and complete picture, because people are presenting to you also what they want you to see. And you have to navigate that and try and understand what's really going on through their lens that they're presenting to you. So it's not a one-to-one reality relationship. It's all very contorted.
That makes perfect sense.
That's a long way of saying it, but it's just not a one-to-one relationship with reality.
Yeah, and also, as you say, you didn't have the knowledge then that you have now, and also when you're documenting people and when you're the subject, you can't be all judgy and shit with them. Like, you have to be in rapport, whatever is happening. There was, I have a little tangent suddenly. There were two different times that, because, you know, there were these allegations about sex orgies and different things on the bus and the whatnot. And there were two different times Corey turns to, I think it's you behind the camera, as the flirtation is getting hot and heavy, and just says like, cut. And a part of me was like, so that's when the orgy happened? Like, after that? Like, this is insane. I wasn't sure.
Right. Well, I wasn't sure. And looking back at that, I mean, in those moments, at the time, I just thought, of course, Corey's meeting attractive women. Of course he wants to flirt with fans or talk with fans in whatever way he wants to after concerts. That did not strike me in the moment as highly problematic in any way. And then when we went back after hearing stories of women and looked at that footage, you look at it through a totally different lens and perspective. And to your point, I don't know what happens after I cut the camera, because when I cut the camera, I also go away. You see what my experience is. My cutting the camera is also me going to my own hotel room or going to my own space. And that's the control that people have over your access to them. As a filmmaker, you don't then just stick around for the most
Watching
part.
people bone each other. Yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's not the reality of the situation. So I am in the dark and continue to be in the dark unless people want to tell me stories or, try to get more information out. And that's what I really have wanted to impart so much about this film, really, is that this film is a thing that I can put out there. It's the story that I could tell with the access that I had. And in doing that, I invite other stories to surface and other people to tell their stories. And my obligation is to the footage and to the window that I was given. And by the time it's over, I understood it. I had only begun to see a window into this world. But by putting the film out, the film isn't the end. It's the opening, and it creates space for other voices and other conversations.
I agree. I want to tell you also that the window that you used for me to view the film through, I loved, because you're not heavy-handed. There's a great moment where the girls are saying none of them have been paid. Where's the money? And you cut to him and his wife on vacation in Hawaii or wherever it was. And I thought, well, that's smart. That's not heavy-handed. That's just like, well, that's just the reality. Maybe they're connected, maybe they're not. But I liked the window that you used, because what it felt like to me, my experience watching it is like, holy shit, this is weird. And then I was entranced to try to figure out what is going on. One of the first moments that I love, I think it's the very beginning of the film, the wedding scene at the very beginning of the film. You're shooting Corey, and Corey is getting very upset that the wedding march is not playing.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts to get very frustrated, and I've seen that tantrum. I've been in Hollywood long enough. I've seen that tantrum 1,000 times. And I assume a certain pathology with that kind of tantrum. And then she comes in, and everything inside me goes, oh, no, 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 run, run. Was her name Courtney?
Courtney.
Yeah. And 2/3 of the way into the film, I thought to myself, Courtney, you got to get out of here. You got to leave. And later you find out, well, I'm not going to say what you find out later. I'm going to leave that one alone. By the way, everybody who's watching this, like, you're welcome to stop watching us now and go watch the film and come back. The film is that fascinating. But there was a moment when all these women are leaving and she defends him. And she is such a emotionally withered, beaten Stepford wife at that point, who doesn't understand what's going on, and just watching her defend him to these women that are making these allegations. Honestly, it felt weirdly like I was back in the cult watching everybody defend, my cult leader. And again, I'm not saying that Corey's a cult leader, and just understand, everybody understand. I'm not saying that he has a particular pathology. I don't know. But speaking of pathologies, his fear of abandonment, am I correct in saying that he had a fear of abandonment or fear of?
Certainly. Well, you said so many great things. So let me.
I'm sorry, I rambled for a moment there. I'm
not
sorry.
at all. I mean, of course I want to respond to all of them, but I won't. Let me just pick one thing, because of course you have to clarify that we're not calling something a cult. And that's always something that we have to do in any kind of journalistic environment. And it's always that, we have to specify. And in thinking about talking with you, I thought, that this binary that we always have to deal with in those environments, calling something a cult or not, is such a dangerous distraction. I understand that we have to deal with it, but this label short circuits the process that we actually need to engage in, which is observing the behaviors and that deserve examination. And even when control isn't deployed as a deliberate technique, or the harm isn't exactly as we are used to noticing it, it's that overall term, that gets all the spotlight and can distract, I think, from the conversation that needs to be having, because people are afraid of it, being accused of slander or whatnot. It's incredible to me that's always such a loud distraction, and we have to deal with it and confront it. And we always have to say, we are not calling this a cult, but really we have to talk about those behaviors and be free to speak about human behavior when it is troubling and quizzical. Right?
I agree 100%. I think you know this. I've studied narcissism, sociopathy, psychopathy a lot since my whole experience.
Yes.
And one of the things that I found interesting is that people that have the pathology of, let's say, narcissism, I'm not saying he has it, I'm just talking generally speaking. Generally speaking, they live in a fantasy world, and they invite people into sort of a shared fantasy, which happens in cults. I've been in a few cults, happened every single time to me. I was invited into a shared fantasy. I got involved in the fantasy. And what was interesting to me about watching Corey is the fantasy he's living in his mind is so different from reality. And I think that you so beautifully portray that without pointing at it. Like, it feels like he thinks he's, in his mind, he's walking out to a massive stadium of 100,000, like a Wembley Stadium. And it's some little shitty bar somewhere. And I felt, and I wanted to share this with you as an audience member, I felt deeply sad for him that fantasy must be a coping mechanism. And I wanted to ask you your thoughts on that idea from spending time with him.
Absolutely. We really wanted to go inside his experience, and this experience that he feels that the world is up against him, and that he is fighting the good fight to get this message of love and light into the world. And I believe that he believes that, and that he wants to get this message out, and he is doing these things. And that doesn't mean that he believes that to the exclusion of other things, but I believe that that core message is within him. And to your point, I love how you describe that, and I'm very grateful, because I believe that all of these things can be true. He can be putting forward, and any of us can be very well intentioned and putting forward a message, and have other very complex patterns of behavior taking place. And in fact, I think that's what happens most of the time. I think most human beings have very positive, would have very positive messaging in their own minds of what they are doing to do good things in the world and help other people. And the way you describe it is exactly right. We really wanted to, Adam Franklin, our editor producer, we talked so much about this, about being in that world of messaging and going forward into the world, and that sort of triumph and tragedy of trying to put something forward, which most of us know what that's like. I mean, that's what life is like. It's just trying to get through things and put them out there. So I think then watching that crumble and watching all of the forces against that, then you're forced as an audience member to really see where the cracks in that are, and how deep the cracks in that are, and wonder where that sense of reality is. And you have to determine where those are.
Yeah, and to pick up on your point, at no point do I ever think, as I'm watching your film, that Corey means to actually hurt people.
Right.
Like, I don't think that. I think that he's driven by a whole bunch of complex things and injuries and things, and he believes that he's the good guy. and he believes that they're being disloyal and they shouldn't be disloyal. There's a great scene. I mean, there's a lot of amazing scenes, but there's this great scene where some of the girls want to leave the bus to go and get food.
Yes.
And he's so upset about it because he says, you're contractually not allowed to do that. We have to stay together. I'm like, this is insane. I understand because, again, I'm not making the complete correlation, but my cult leader had a kind of fear of abandonment and a level of controlling people that was so bad that he got blackmail material on them, all because he didn't want to be abandoned, all because he wanted to have control. And it's so fascinating watching it through your eyes, just watching Corey, who really feels that they're being disloyal and it's upsetting to him. And the feeling I had, I wanted to share with you and see what you thought about this. The feeling I had is that Corey doesn't see them as people. They are means to an end for his feelings and his worldview. They're sort of like chess pieces. The chess pieces want to leave the bus. I don't like that. I didn't feel like he saw the fullness of them as individual souls. I don't know what you think about that, but that's what I was feeling as I was watching that scene.
I think that's a fascinating analysis, and that makes me want you to talk to other people in this world and some of the other people in the film. That's my first deep reaction to that, as I think that's a really incredible. I mean, you have such a unique view on this from your life of experience, and the subjects in the film have such a unique experience that I didn't have. And so I think you all have different connections, outside of my experience that make me want you guys to connect directly. But that scene is so intense. And along with also the shower scene, which is sort of its cousin.
Yes.
And that is very classic. And I think it's exactly what we're talking about, that in the idea there is, we're keeping you safe, we're keeping you together, we're keeping everyone, on a tour. We have to keep everyone under our supervision and control, and make sure that you don't get harmed. And I think when you see it from the outside, it feels very different. It feels like,
Yes.
people have to be able to go get something to eat. And as a participant in that, it was certainly very difficult to navigate, because I was trying to determine. I mean, I also, I was an observer. This role, the role of being in the state of documenting something, but also needing to fend for yourself, and also needing to go take a shower.
Yeah.
And
I was wondering about that. Like, if she didn't have a shower for 2 days, I'm wondering, like, how did you fare, on a bus?
I also did not get to take a shower for 2 days. And that is the complicated relationship where I needed to be part of the group, and I needed to stay. I needed to stay part of that group for the amounts of time that I was in there, and I couldn't just eject myself and leave the tour just because I felt that I was deserved something better than what was happening. But and also I wanted to stick with everyone, and that's, I have thought back over that many times. I mean, this is obviously a classic discussion with the role of a documentary filmmaker, and the idea of what your role is in that moment in documenting something, and whether you defect in some way, or I don't know, you make a grand choice to sort of leave in protest in some way, or ring some alarm. But they were, all of the women were staying on the tour, and deciding to persist with what they wanted to do. And I did not want to break the mold. I mean, I didn't want to disrupt what they wanted either. So I stuck with I stuck with the program and didn't go off and do my own thing either. And it's a small thing. It's a small moment in the overarching thing, but it is probably the biggest moment I can think of. It's just a shower, but it's kind of a big representation.
It's profound because the other thing I was thinking is, as that moment was happening, I was thinking, because some of the girls were also treating you as a sort of confessional, or however it worked. They were confessing to camera about how they felt about things. And I thought that it was extraordinarily complex and fascinating that you captured that. And I was also wondering, like, what was it like for you in terms of the way you felt? Because on some level, you must have identified with each and every one of them. You probably understood to some degree where Corey was coming from. You understood probably where the women were coming from. It's a lot of complexity to hold. And as an audience member at different times, I felt a deep, deep sadness. Deep sadness. And I was wondering what it was like for you.
I did understand where everyone was coming from. And I think that is the responsibility of a filmmaker, is to be able to hold all of these perspectives at once. And even now with the film coming out, people will write to me with extreme perspectives on one side or another. There are people who feel that Corey doesn't deserve any sort of criticism or illumination of difficulties of his behavior because he has been victimized by Hollywood, and therefore he does not deserve any more difficulty in his life. And there are people who feel that this film should have been something else. It should have not been
like like a takedown or something.
It should have been a full takedown.
Yeah.
And of course, I believe I made the film that I wanted to make and that my team and I believe in strongly, which is that it presents the story that opens your eyes to the difficulty of what was going on, the difficulty of, as you said at the beginning, you're following the story. Hopefully we put you inside the understanding of how this could have happened, which is maybe the thing that I am the most proud of, is that hopefully you get an understanding of how this could have happened in the first place, how you could buy into the idea and go along with it and be so excited about something and see the fractures and the moments in behavior of how it went down and how it could have crumbled. And that is very important to me, to be able to see all of those nuances of behavior. And having 100%. Made it one way or the other would have demolished those ideas.
100%. One of the things I hate, and perhaps because of what I've been through, is I hate cult porn,
Yes, absolutely. So
I loved that you showed the inner workings. You showed betrayal, blindness, where it's Courtney's the wife. Is she the wife? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Like her betrayal, blindness, where she can't see any of the betrayals or anything, and she defends him. Like all these complex things going on. Watching Corey, this is my interpretation, who doesn't seem to exist unless he's getting fuel and praise and an audience. It's very, very complex. And I love the complexity because I think people are very quick to go like, oh, well, he should be in prison or the women are all lying or whatever it is. I did want to ask you about the things he said about what happened to him in Hollywood. And you may not be able to answer this. So if you can't, that's fine. Is it your impression that those things did occur, that there was some kind of abuse? Because I know he says there was, and I'm not sure.
In general, abuse in his life in Hollywood?
Yeah.
Is that your question?
Yeah.
I certainly believe him that he was abused in his youth. Absolutely. Yes. And I mean, I think to me, that is the biggest question. And from there, I would never hazard to dive into extreme specifics on people, places, or things, because obviously, as you know, that's not our job to adjudicate those accusations. No. But I think it's fair for me to say that I believe that he was abused.
Yeah. I do think so as well. And one of the things that your film does in such a beautiful way, and I don't know that I don't know that you set out to do this. Maybe you did, but it raises the question: is the behavior of somebody like this justified because they've been abused in that way? And I think that's a very important question. And my answer is always, generally speaking, but I'm dealing with, I'm making films about truth psychopaths and that kind of thing. And so my answer is always, I don't care what happened to them. You can't justify the behavior. I just thought it was very interesting that you raised the question in the audience. Like, is it okay because he got hurt?
Mm-hmm.
You know, is it not okay? Not heavy-handed. Just like it was constantly there. It's like, okay, he's been hurt, but Jesus, this is not good. I don't know what you thought about that.
Absolutely. I that comes up constantly. It comes up constantly that this idea that someone who has been harmed can also enact troubling behavior on others, and that someone can sincerely be trying to tell the truth and still distort the truth. And I think that has been actually a marker of, I think, reactions to the film, is whether or not a person can hold those things as two different, two realities that coexist, because they have to coexist, because they do.
Because they do, yes.
Yes. And I think to go back to your question about Courtney earlier, which I don't want to forget about, I do think there's a world of people around, not just Corey, but other people like him that are very that hold on to the sense that he has spoken out for victims, the victims in Hollywood, victims of different type of abuse. And you can absolutely understand why that feels hugely important to people, to see someone who has spoken up and spoken out and has a voice. And I believe that's why it is very difficult for some people to see that, any sort of criticism. But I think that also is why there is a world of people that gather around not just Corey, but people like Corey, that will uphold that world and that idea of the world around them, because it's too difficult to, it feels like they're getting rid of that support if they were to get rid of that idea of the voice itself that has spoken up for victims.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. There's situations like in The Vow, and there's certain characters that are in The Vow and not in The Vow that are still loyal because they got good things out of our cult. I'm a little freer to say it on my end. And they feel bad because if they acknowledge the bad things, then somehow it affects the good things that they experience. And so I was like, yeah, I get that. I get that. It is interesting, though, that one of the things Corey says, and he says at the very beginning when he's doing an interview or something, he says about all the women are all broken. And he's somehow giving them a shot. And a part of me was like, well, that's quite a thing to say. There's a real arrogance in that. And also I was thinking, I mean, did they come broken? Did they leave broken?
Sorry, go ahead.
No. I was mulling that over.
Right away, because I know that I think I can say every single woman in the film, and I'm sure beyond, because there are many, many more women that have been involved in that world, not just in Corey's Angels, but women that have perhaps played music with him or whatnot, that would very happily speak up and say, it's in the film. I mean, there's a journalist that writes an article that sort of underscores that idea. And Margot says, I've never been lost a day in my life, because he calls them lost girls.
Yes.
And that's always the case. They are always in a situation where they're finding themselves having to uphold the fact that they are actually functional people. But to the other side of that, I think you do see what happens when someone is perhaps in that world or taken care of for a long time. When Courtney, to your point, it's one of the things that people react to the most in the movie when Courtney is talking about Margot and she says she has her own car, she has her own apartment, she's used to
Yes.
running all over town whenever she wants.
Yes.
And that is so shocking and so illuminating to people, to audiences. You can hear audiences gasp at that because it is not that she is incapable or that she is a lost person. It is that she has clearly just lost a bit of agency in that moment, and
Yeah.
she illuminates it by reflecting on Margot's
Yeah.
being in the world. It's
I'm
very
so happy you kept that piece in, because I remember thinking, oh my goodness, her point of reference is like one of these cults, I don't know, in the middle of the country, Midwest, who's not really experienced the world
Mm,
and sees this other person, but that's not what they've chosen. And somehow that's almost what she has is almost better than that
mm,
because of a kind of, quote unquote brainwashing. There's so many great scenes, but I wanted to bring up another scene that was so uncomfortable.
mm.
I'm telling you all these things because I'm the freshest audience member you have right now, I think. And there's a moment where Courtney, and just for the audience to understand, Courtney is Corey's wife. There's a moment where Courtney's dad surprise visits her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's so emotional and she's crying. And a part of me, as I was watching it, was thinking, is she finally letting out all the things she can't express? There's all this grief. But what's so brilliant, I don't know how this happened. I guess it just happened and you just kept on rolling. Corey steps between them and you and starts talking about his childhood, his parents, and how shitty they were, while this incredibly beautiful reunion is happening behind him between his wife and her father. And everything inside me says, shut up, Corey. I'm interested in that. Oh my God, please stop fucking talking.
I know.
It's brilliant.
I was
It's
so
brilliant.
worried that it wouldn't read on camera. I of course don't mean to interrupt you. Please.
No. It's brilliant because I've met many people that I think are very narcissistic, and that's something I've seen where they will try and take the thing and make it about themselves, almost like there's too much limelight here. I need the light.
Uh-huh.
So in a sort of psychological breakdown way, I'm just ticking boxes in my mind. And I am so devastated for her because in my mind, I'm saying this, not you, this is what she lives with all the time. She can never truly be seen. And in that moment, her father is seeing her, and maybe you're stuck in the bus or whatever, but the shot's amazing. You've got Corey in the foreground on the right, and it's just like, oh my God, stop talking about your pain. And you've got them in the background on the left, still having that moment. Brilliant.
I'm so glad that reads so well because I was worried that it wouldn't fully read on camera. But many people have brought that up, and I'm thrilled that it read properly. And I agree with you about her emotion. It's you can't quite tell if it's obviously excitement and thrill to see her father, and you also wonder, is this some kind of relief? And it's a very loaded tear that runs down her face, or tears.
Yeah.
But I also think it's incredibly telling. I think about the fact that fame crowned Corey so young, and the dynamic almost resembles an ancient Egyptian court where this child is placed on the throne and adults organize around him and the throne's needs, and that he's accustomed to that. So in all of these circumstances, I look at both sides and I think he knows this film is about him largely. And so he's going to take this opportunity to say, well, I'm going to make a story beat about fathers and give her a moment about my father, which then we allow to have happen. But at the same time, it is extraordinarily telling about the nature of, as you describe, I mean, this moment where to literally step in between is extraordinary. Extraordinary.
I mean, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I couldn't have imagined a better thing that could happen to expose the dynamics that must be going on all the time.
Incredible.
And the thing, it's incredible. I mean, such amazing filmmaking. And the thing that I think is so interesting as well, there's a line, I wrote it down here somewhere. He says, "It's not my cross to bear, but I will if I must." I thought, what a line. It's this insane messianic persecution complex. And I think it's so interesting that you reveal that this person who is doing objectively cruel things to these women feels so persecuted. For instance, anybody that leaves has to do with dark satanic forces. Now, I've been studying a lot of different cults and cult leaders. I talk to a lot of cult survivors, people that are just waking up from cults. And they come out with stories like, well, he said it was because of the dark forces. He said that, the dark forces had got to me or whatever. And I thought the persecution complex is so interesting. Of course, that's why you called it Versus the World.
Yes.
And it seems to me that maybe in his mind justified whatever, I guess. You may not be able to comment on that, but I just wondered, it seemed that way, that because of all these forces.
Yes. I mean, I think that idea of those forces is fundamental to absolutely everything. And I'll say in this moment, it's incredible. I think it goes back to what you were talking about with Courtney, which I keep wanting to go back to because it's wanting to uphold if you believe that things are either in the light and godly and good, and if they are not in that light, then they are dark and satanic. That creates an incredibly clear line in the sand, and that's that. So I think you see that throughout, but that is also what we are dealing with now in Corey's I guess inability to look at the film and the nuance of the film and I guess in any way work with, talk about the film or whatnot.
Yeah.
Because even though there is so much that espouses his views and his struggles and is kind of a complex dealing with his life and times, you are either in the light or the dark. And there's so much to be said for that worldview. That's an entire world of a psychological topic.
It is, it goes back to that idea of like, children when they're young and sort of going to that splitting phase where things are all good or all bad. And it feels a bit like, he's stuck there. It's interesting though, because, you look at anything that goes against what he wants is the dark forces and satanic. And there was a moment I thought to myself, at the same time, if what he says is true about the shit he went through as a kid, that's some pretty dark stuff. So some of it might actually be true. I don't know.
I understand what you're saying. I think when we face really horrible behavior from humanity, there is something soothing, or it's a relevant coping mechanism to be able to say that some people are just evil. And I think that just instinctively makes sense when you go into the darkest corners of humanity and human behavior. I think it's a dangerous way to think about humanity, and I don't think it's particularly helpful, and I don't think it allows us to progress in a meaningful way, but I understand it as a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah, and again, it's such an amazing psychological study. I mean, I really would love to, and I'm going to tell a bunch of psychologists that I know to see the film because I
Mm,
would love to get their views,
mm,
on what they're seeing. Because I can't diagnose anybody, and they probably couldn't either, but they certainly could talk about patterns.
sure.
There was, just want to quickly, I have some notes that I made as I was going through. Did you know? Did you notice in talking to me that at the voice clinic, when he goes to the voice clinic, there was the antacid medication Nixium
Of
on the
course.
counter? You saw? Yeah, yeah. I was
Me.
wondering about that.
I noticed it when I was there.
Oh, that's
I
crazy.
I saw that. I mean, I didn't know that medicine existed and was called that, and I saw it there and just was absolutely
Yeah,
stunned. Just
that's
stunned.
crazy. I don't know. I've spoken about this only a little bit publicly, but you know that so there's Nexium, the medication. There's NXIVM, the organization that I was in, and then there's the ancient Roman word nexum. Nexum is the word for debt bondage. It's slavery.
Oh my goodness.
None of us realized that was his joke.
Ugh.
It was always about debt bondage from the very beginning. But he loved hiding things.
Yes.
My
Yes.
dude's a whole different level.
Yeah. Well,
Not the
that's
same, not the
another
same.
level. That is
Yeah.
incredible. That is
There,
incredible.
there was another amazing scene. He goes into, I think it's NBC, and he does the interview, which
Mhm.
turns out very badly. And he's very upset. And this is just like, I just really congratulate you on just the nuance. They go outside and have a snowball fight.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, it's so beautiful because it's not cut and dry.
Mhm.
There's so many emotions happening that feel simultaneous. And it speaks to the complexity of what you're able to hold as a human being, to make those choices.
Mm.
Because I see way too many things in Hollywood that are so fucking cut and dry and like unidimensional that it's such a relief to watch. I should be your agent. It's such a relief to watch the nuance. It's a
I'm
good
with
choice.
you on that. I appreciate that so much, and that is the aspect of this film that I feel the most strongly about. We hear people say that a lot, that you have to trust audiences to be smart enough to understand these things, and I think that's almost a little bit of a trope now. It is beyond that. It's that life is that complicated, and people are complex beyond what we've begun to figure out. Look at us naming behaviors and trying to quantify things that are completely unquantifiable about ourselves, and trying to devise a philosophy of how to live, and just scraping away at these things.
Yeah.
So to present life in a way that shows the absolute complexity of some of these questions is almost the bare minimum that we can do. It's not to say that we shouldn't have films that are, exposés or that uncover things or show a certain point of view. But I think a lot of those films inherently leave out the complexity of those issues. I mean, all issues have depth and other sides to them, and contradictions that don't make sense. And it's hard to put those into perspective. But I also think that behavior is the most complex aspect of the human experience, and watching behavior versus what we say about ourselves is the big conundrum. And
Yeah.
we can say as much as we want about what we think about ourselves, but our behavior tells a different story. So that's
Mm.
where following our actions and seeing ourselves behave on screen is a whole other level
Yeah.
to explore.
Yeah. Now, my understanding is that Corey did see the film when you were done,
He did.
and did I hear he walked out?
He watched almost all of the film. He watched till pretty much the very end, and
Okay.
then he left at the end.
I'm assuming not happy.
He was not happy. He did not seem happy. I was hoping to get to speak with him about it and have a conversation, and unfortunately that did not happen.
I totally understand, and I understand why you would have wanted to. From my perspective, when I hear that, I assume that the film went contrary to the fantasy.
Indeed.
And
Indeed. Well,
and it was
I think
injurious maybe in some way. It felt injurious maybe in some way.
right. But I think it's crucial to understand why he cannot afford for any of these women's voices or any dissenting voice to be heard or to be included. Because I think dissenting voices or voices other than our own have to be tolerable and have to be included in our stories. And I think any criticism that gets seen as invalid and part of the system against him is a problem. You know, when questioning the narrative that you have about yourself is seen as betrayal, that is an issue. And I think that's where we are.
Yeah. I totally understand. There was another scene I wanted to just mention to you that I thought was so interesting. There's a scene where Courtney is very upset. I think it's when the NDA gets publicized, and she's making a smoothie in the background. And I was like, this is so interesting. And she's a skinny gal. She's already skinny.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, man, this feels like DOS. This feels like the girls have to have a certain weight. And so there was that one thing. And I thought it was brilliant. And then at one point he gets upset because she's doing it. She's making the smoothie. And I thought, oh my God, it's right. It's all there. Everything that's happening is right there on camera. Mm. That was one thing. And then the other thing I thought is it's what we all understand. Nobody, I'm not saying is a villain, but I'm saying, generally speaking, no villain believes that they're doing bad things. In fact, they seem to believe that they're trying to save the world. And I thought that was very much the case here.
Absolutely. He certainly believes, you see it in the movie when he will put that message out over and over. And he, as I have said, and we have underlined, he absolutely believes in those messages. And that notion that belief in doing good does not prevent harm. In fact, I think that belief can help people overlook harm. Mm-hmm. And I think the norm is that leaders often see themselves as benevolent and see themselves as saviors. But
yes.
Belief in goodness can coexist with problematic dynamics if there's no accountability.
Just as a sort of aside, I've begun to think more and more that the more convinced I am of my own moral goodness, the more susceptible I am to doing stupid shit. Mm. Versus if I can allow the awareness of my life that I've done good things and shitty things, because I'm just human, I feel that is a better approach to life than the sort of virtual purity, kind of like everything I do is good and I'm just trying to save the world. And believe me, I've been like that in my life, right?
Really? Yeah. I guess we all have. We start out wanting to protect ourselves and go, no, I wouldn't. And I think as you get older, hopefully, if we do things right, we just acknowledge when we do something wrong. I think that's the hope for becoming a true adult, is just facing what we do that hurts other people and is problematic and saying, tell me what's going on here. Tell me what you feel and let's talk this through. And I'm sorry for anything that I did to hurt you. Let's figure this out and talk about it. Yeah. And that is the truest marker of adulthood that I have found in human beings.
Yes, 100% agree. The other thing I was thinking as I got towards the end of your film that I wanted to share with you was that, and again, this is my perspective, not yours, is that...
It might be. You never know.
Well, it might be, but I don't want to want to force you into any kind of corner. I thought it was, what I saw was the brilliant expose of the inner workings of a cult, in the sense that You see the girls that are flying monkeys. You see the ones that are suppressing themselves. You see the coercion. You see the coercive control. You see the guilting. You see the using "you're going to be famous" as leverage, as a carrot. You see all these things play out, and you see normal human beings who don't understand exactly what they're getting involved in. And some of them, as the things progress, decide, okay, this is fucked up. I can't do this. But it's great because it shows you the inner workings of how these things work. And it doesn't start with, come and do blood sacrifices with us. By the way, there's no blood sacrifices in this film. I'm being silly. But it doesn't start with that. It starts with, hey, come join a band, for instance, And I get it. I get why every single one of those ladies wanted to be involved.
Yes.
I get it.
Of course. Absolutely. I love what you're saying, because it is and several people, and now many others, would use the term cult, and do use the term cult in the film in relation to that particular time and group, and that world. And I think what you're saying from my perspective is that it illuminates how these behaviors can evolve in places that you wouldn't normally look for them. And these behaviors can emerge you wouldn't necessarily imagine in a rock tour that you would see those types of behaviors. But when you see them emerge and you think, is that really what's happening? Is that, and then they sort of pile on one another, and you see the optimism in the beginning. You see in the quick interviews and at the start, just the absolute bright sunlit optimism of everyone wanting this to be just full of joy and trying to continue to feel that way against all odds until they realize that clearly that's not how they feel anymore. And as Darcy says at the end, it took one trip away for her to have this realization where she thought, oh my God, I'm being treated totally differently by people that know me. And she suddenly had this flash of realization, and hearing that is just so, it sends chills down my spine still when I hear that.
It was great. It was great. And I want to just say to my audience as a reminder, because I've said to my audience very often when they say, how do I get my daughter, friend, whatever, son out of a cult? And I always say you have to show them what actual love is, so that they have a comparison. So when they come spend time with you, they can compare it to what they're experiencing. You can't say you're in a cult. You have to show them what actual love is without any conditions, right?
That's so wonderful. In thinking about the world of cults and why we're all so, everyone I know is fascinated by cults and has seen every single, what did you call it before?
Cult porn.
Yeah, right. Every single, cult doc series that's been out there. Yeah. And I really think that it's such a central topic because it taps into our need for belonging, which in my experience drives everything about what we do and who we are. And we're trying to figure out how to live life. But ultimately, we have to feel like we belong somewhere to one another. And cults and cult-like behavior is just the natural outcome of the struggle. And when the struggle goes off the rails even a little bit.
Yes. I just have a few more questions for you. The one thing that just was burning in my mind at the end of the film is where he all good. Yeah. At the end of the film where he is standing in front of the audience and he's about to show his film, and he says that the streamer pulled it down. And it seems like they pulled it down because there's this expose of all the dark forces kind of thing. And I was just curious, was the film actually pulled down at the very end, his film?
Well, as I understand it, his as I understand,
is this a complex one?
Well, it's funny because I'm trying to think of what what actually happened. I mean, the story that I have been told, and I believe from verifiable sources, is that the website, that there was a huge amount of attention on the film, and the website crashed.
Okay.
And so which is great for him. You know, he had
Fantastic.
huge attention on that movie, and that is tremendous. But it was an incredible time. And, you know, that was the moment where he realized, you know, he was making his own film. And so that was my sort of exit from frame.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
you know, that was when I didn't really know the full story going on, but you know, that's where we decided to leave the story. And it's funny, sometimes people will go, well, what happened then? You know, and you just have to find a place to leave the story. But, you know, you hear those guys on the phone talking about, you know, hackers and dark forces taking it down. And it's just extraordinary. Just extraordinary.
That's crazy.
So, who knows? Maybe it could have been dark forces taking it down.
It could have been. Yeah. I'm not so sure anymore. I don't know. Maybe I'm too conspiratorial now, but I'm thinking some things are possible. Some things probably not. Some things are possible. Is there anything else that you really want people to know about this film? Because I really want people to see this film because I think it's fascinating.
Well, thank you for asking.
You'd like them to know?
I would just love people to support the film. You know, it's been a real exercise in, you know, getting the sort of word of mouth going and getting the word out there. So it's done well on Apple, and renting it on Apple is, you don't have to subscribe to Apple. You just have to go out there and rent it for $4.99.
Yeah.
And it's also on YouTube and Google. You can just go rent it there. It's in many other countries at the moment. It should be in, it's sort of slowly spreading worldwide. And it's just, word of mouth is such a huge component with independent films. And I think we're just going to be seeing more and more of that in this world. And so we really appreciate that. If you can shout and scream and post and tell people about the movie. And that's really what we rely on. And I also think, you know, supporting and giving love to people in the movie, the subjects of the movie, I think is really great. Whoever, you know, speaks to your heart and mind. And gosh, there are probably many other things I would love to say about it, but I think those are the most important things. And
is there a way that people can reach or can find those people online that were in the film?
They're all on social media, so you can look them up on Instagram. And if you go to coreyfilm.com, you can find more information about the film and about folks there for sure. And we want to try and make everything easy to contact us. We have social media, which is just the initials of the film, CFVSTW, Corey Feldman versus the World. And we're just all, I mean, if you Google the movie, you'll find us everywhere. And we definitely appreciate support. You can message us if you want directly. It's a very small team of people, and we're just extraordinarily grateful for the support. And talking to you is just a real thrill. Your work is exceptional and singular, and really it's extraordinary to hear your thoughts on the film, and would love to keep talking about it as things evolve. So hopefully
we have a lot to talk about. You are a magnificent human being. Your nuance, you're a professional nuancer. It's so refreshing in the world right now. You know, somebody like you that thinks the way you do, that creates the way you do, it's really important, because life is so complex. So amazing job. Really beautiful job.
Thank you, Mark. That means so much coming from you. That is, that's an extraordinary compliment, and a big one for me, because that's something I care about very much, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks for an amazing chat.
Of course. I'll talk to you again.
Yes, you will.